What do you see when you hear the words national park? Do you see beautiful mountain vistas, pristine beaches, unique scenery like caves? What about wildlife? Yes to all those things and more. But in some parks, you will see lots of cars looking for parking, tour buses idling, and people queued up for that perfect selfie. Crowds are the opposite of a serene experience with nature. Can you see the most beautiful sights and enjoy the serene experience? The answer is yes, but you have to do certain things, and I'm going to share them with you. Without a doubt, national parks in the US are more popular than ever. 88 million people visited the 63 flagship national parks in 2022. Visitation was pretty steady, around 70 million, until 2014, when it started to climb, leveling out just after 2016, the Park Service centennial year. Park visitation more than recovered from the pandemic as Americans rediscovered the outdoors. We've been to 60 out of the 63 national parks, so we know firsthand how to avoid the crowd in the national parks. You can avoid the crowd by following these 10 tips. Tip number 1. Visit the most popular parks during the shoulder seasons. If your schedule allows, visit during the shoulder seasons when the weather is still nice enough, but the crowd is mostly gone. Shoulder season varies by park, but they are typically spring, like April or May, or fall, like September and October. For example, 43% of the visitors came to Yosemite National Park during June, July, and August in 2019. Fully 60% of Yellowstone visitors came during June, July, and August in 2021. The number of visitors in October at Yellowstone is only 1/3 of July. While parks with short seasons start to close facilities as the peak season winds down, there is usually more than enough to see with adequate services. But check the NPS and concessionaires' websites for the most accurate information. At parks with heavy winter snowfall, such as Crater Lake, the fully open day varies year to year. Check the historical opening dates before you make your plans. We seldom visit parks in June, July, and August. We stay home to avoid the crowd and the heat. In addition to fewer people, spring and fall have the best weather at most parks. Tip number 2. Start your day early or end your day late. What if your schedule doesn't allow you to visit during shoulder seasons? Well, you can still get that uncrowded experience if you get up early, stay late in the park, or both. Most people get to the most popular sites at the most popular parks between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. By the time most people get up, have their breakfast, and drive to the sites, is usually 10 o'clock. At many of the most popular sites or trailheads, parking is hard to find after 9 o'clock. Some of the most beautiful, serene scenery with the best lighting is at sunrise, with a few exceptions such as Delicate Arch at Arches National Park, where it can get really crowded even during sunrise or sunset. The crowd thins out after 4 o'clock, when most visitors leave. Since the days are typically long in the summer, there is plenty of time to see the sights before dark, without the crowd. As an example, a day we spent in Yellowstone in early October started from Canyon Village, where we stayed. We got to the nearby Grand Canyon of Yellowstone shortly after sunrise and had the place all to ourselves to watch the sun light up the colorful canyon. We then drove to Lower Geyser Basin and Fountain Paint Pot before 9:30 a.m. It was starting to get crowded, but by the time we finished our short hike at 11 o'clock, the tour buses were arriving and the parking lot was full. After Fountain Paint Pot, we went on a hike with our packed lunch at the Lacey Creek Trail to Shoshone Lake, the largest lake without road access. We encountered less than a dozen other people on our 6-mile trek. We finished the hike around 3 o'clock and went to Old Faithful to watch the geyser. Yes, I know it was before 4 o'clock, and yes, it was crowded, but certain places like Old Faithful was built to handle lots of people, so it was okay. After watching the geyser erupt on schedule, we went to one of the most beautiful, colorful sights, the Grand Prismatic Spring. We got there at 4:30 when the last of the tour buses were leaving and the parking lot was emptying out. We lingered at Grand Prismatic for a good while the crowd really thinned out before heading back to Canyon Village. So, visit the most popular sites before 9 o'clock or after 4 o'clock. Tip number 3, stay inside the park at the larger parks. At the larger parks, such as Yellowstone and Death Valley, stay overnight inside the park. Why? Because you want to get to the sites early and stay at the sites late to beat the crowd. At Yellowstone, for example, it takes 50 minutes to go from the gateway town of West Yellowstone to Old Faithful. From the northern gateway town of Gardner to Old Faithful takes 1.5 hours. This makes it harder to get there early or to stay late. Another example is Katmai National Park, where you can see salmon jumping into the waiting jaws of brown bears at Brooks Falls. Katmai is remote, with no roads, a short season, and very limited lodging. During the peak season, when salmons are jumping and the bears are eating, the viewing platform is very crowded during the day, when the day trippers descend on Katmai. However, before 10 a.m. and after 5 p.m., the platforms are not crowded at all because the day trippers are not there. With the long Alaskan days during the peak season, you can hang out at the viewing platform after 5 p.m. for as long as you want. This is a huge benefit of staying inside the park. You have to plan ahead at some parks. To get lodging at Katmai, for example, you need to enter a lottery in December 2 years before your planned visit. So for example, to get lodging in 2024, you need to enter the lottery in December of 2022. Don't forget, roads at national parks are not superhighways. They're usually winding roads, so you can't go very fast. You have to take that into account. Staying inside the park, however, is not necessary at the smaller parks or where the gateway community is close to the top sites. For example, Bryce Canyon City is only 10 minutes from Sunrise Point at Bryce Canyon National Park. At Zion, the gateway town of Springdale is only 9 minutes from Canyon Junction Bridge, the starting point of Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. Tip number 4, take a hike or a nap in the middle of the day. What should you do in the middle of the day when the roads and the sites are crowded? Take a hike. Even at the most crowded national parks, the crowd disappears once you get on the trail. At the most popular parks, there are lots of quote-unquote theme park people who either cannot or would not stray more than a few hundred feet from their car. With some notable exceptions, such as Angel's Landing in the Narrows at Zion, Vernal Falls at Yosemite, or the Bright Angel Trail Grand Canyon, those trails are crowded all the time. You won't see a crush of people on the trails. To be sure, you will see some people, but you just won't feel the pressure of the crowd. In order to really appreciate the beautiful parks and to get the full impact of the park, you need to take a hike. A few miles on the trail is just a ticket to get away from the crowd and enjoy the national park and the serenity. Of course, you see very few people on the backcountry trails, but most of us do not have the skill or the ability to do long overnight hikes. Now, what if you don't want to or can't do a hike? Well, you can always go back to your lodge or campsite, take a nap, and have a leisurely lunch during the middle of the day. You can then head back to the sites in the late afternoon. Now, you did take my advice to stay inside the park, right? Tip number 5, take the park shuttle if available. At some of the most popular parks, such as Zion, Yosemite, Glacier, Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, and Acadia, the National Park Service provides shuttle service to the most popular sites during the peak season. In some places during the peak season, the shuttle is the only way to enter the most congested areas, such as Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. Now, there are many advantages of taking the shuttle. First, you don't have to worry about finding a parking spot. Now, this is especially important for the popular trailheads because those cars are parked while the people go on hours of hikes and they don't move around very much. Second, you can enjoy the scenery without having to worry about driving and the traffic. And third, you can do one-way hikes from one stop to another. At some parks, such as Zion and Bryce, the shuttle starts at the gateway community near hotels, making them even more convenient. The park shuttle doesn't eliminate the crowd, but it does make visiting with the crowd much more manageable. Tip number 6, visit the lesser known parts of the most popular parks. Now, many people only go to the most popular sites in the most popular parks. At these same parks, however, there are often lesser known but almost as beautiful sites that have far fewer people. For example, while Zion Canyon Scenic Drive is often packed with people and cars, the other Zion, Kolob Canyon, which is right off of Interstate 15, has far fewer visitors and a different view from above the canyon. Less than 10% of the Zion visitors visit Kolob Canyon. The 5-mile Kolob Canyon Drive leads to a vantage point looking down on the beautiful canyon. Contrast this with a view from the bottom of the canyon at the much more crowded Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. Another example is the Hetch Hetchy area of Yosemite. This is the other Yosemite Valley that was reported to be nearly as pretty as Yosemite Valley, but was dammed in 1923 to provide water to San Francisco. Only 1 in 100 Yosemite visitors visit Hetch Hetchy. The above water scenery is just as beautiful with very nice waterfalls. It is well worth the drive. While the scenery at some of the lesser known parts of the park may not be quite as stunning as the most popular parts, the lack of crowd makes it more enjoyable. Tip number 7, visit the under the radar quote-unquote parks that are almost as beautiful. There are many stunning national parks that are not crowded any time of the year. Since I visited nearly all of the national parks in the US, I can tell you I have my most enjoyable visits at these under the radar parks. Here are some examples. Black Canyon of the Gunnison, a smaller but steeper version of the Grand Canyon where the sun almost never reaches the river. Voyagers, a large lake with all kinds of water activities and wildlife. Badlands, a unique scene with an easy-to-tour loop drive. Great Sand Dunes, a huge sandbox. No crowds here because you can go anywhere on the sand dunes and any people gets well dispersed. New River Gorge, gorgeous mountains, pretty river, rafting, and history. It's a new national park that's bound to get more popular, so visit her before the word gets out. Tip number 8, plan ahead. Planning ahead has many advantages. It's especially important at the most popular parks where overnight accommodations inside the park are sold out many months or even more than a year ahead. Here are items to pay attention to. First, lodging. Due to limited supply, lodging inside the park are often sold out many months ahead. Timed entry reservations. During peak season and time, reservation is required to enter parts of some of the parks and on specific trails. This may not apply if you already have campground or other activities reserved. However, the window of when these reservations are available varies considerably, so check the NPS website for the details. Now, this list changes each year, So here is the list for 2023. Number 1, Acadia at the Cadillac Mountain, which requires a reservation from May 24th to October 22nd. Now this is for vehicles. Now time varies by month, but it's as early as 4 a.m. and as late as 8 p.m. Number 2, Arches, April 1st to October 31st from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Reservations required for vehicles. Shenandoah, the Old Rag Mountain Trail, you need a ticket from March 1st to November 20th. Once you get a ticket, it's good for the whole day. At Zion, Angel's Landing Trail, a very popular trail, requires reservation. Rocky Mountain National Park, from May 26th to October 22nd, between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., reservation is required for the entire park. And if you want to go on Bear Lake Road, you need a reservation between 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. Glacier National Park, from May 26th to September 10th. If you want to go into the west entrance, you require a reservation. And if you want to go on the east entrance, you require a reservation from July 1st to September 10th. Haleakala in Hawaii, you need a reservation from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. because sunrise at Haleakala is very, very crowded. Yosemite, they changed their policy in 2023. They required weekend reservations in February for the Firefall, but the rest of the year, if you want to enter the park, the reservation is not required anymore. Now, you do need a reservation for the Half Dome Trail from the Friday before Memorial Day to the second Monday in October. Okay, now, it would do you well if you buy the park entrance and the tour tickets ahead of time online at recreation.gov to avoid the line and to get your desired time. In some cases, a tour ticket is required to visit certain parts of the park. Examples are Mammoth Cave, Carlsbad Caverns, Gateway Arch if you want to go to the top of the arch, and Wind Cave. Also look for closures or construction. Check the MPS website for any closures or construction and avoid those areas. There's a handy page with links to the National Park Service websites and blog posts that's in the description box. Tip number 9, pack what you need for the day. Whatever your plans are for the day, bring your food, water, sunscreen, bug spray, etc. that you will need for the day. At the most popular parks, lunch is a madhouse with expensive, subpar food at the concessions. Don't waste your time fighting the crowd. Bring a sandwich and have a nice lunch at the many picnic areas or just on a nice rock with beautiful scenery surrounding you. Tip number 10, visit after dark. Some of the parks have the best stargazing or moonlit hikes. You don't have to worry about crowds or reservations. We stargazed close to new moon at Black Canyon, Big Bend, Death Valley, Glacier, Joshua Tree, and the Great Basin National Parks, and they were incredible. The Milky Way was clearly visible. We simply went to a scenic pullout or a parking lot away from light sources, turned off the car, and looked up. Most of the time, there was no one else around. We went on a ranger-led moonlit hike during the full moon at Capitol Reef. The moon was so bright, there wasn't any problems seeing the trail. No crowd and no sun beating down on you. All your senses are heightened as you listen to the night sounds. If you, like me, value solitude at national parks, these tips will enhance your visit to our wonderful national parks. I plan my trips specifically to avoid crowds. I'd rather see a less stunning sight with fewer people than to fight the crowd and traffic to see the most, which is often overrated, the quote-unquote most stunning sights. I'd rather put on a jacket, hat, and gloves, brave the elements to see the most stunning sights than to fight a crowd on a hot summer day. I'd rather get up early and enjoy popular sights in solitude at sunrise than to sleep in and have to fight the crowd. I can always take a nap in the afternoon. I hope these tips are useful and make a positive difference in your enjoyment of our wonderful national parks. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and get a lot more good content on our national parks. We are on our way to visit all the national parks in the United States. Follow along by hitting the subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new video is released. Give it a thumbs up if you like this video, and please share it with everybody that you know.